Adapting works to other mediums is a difficult task, and one that comes with much controversy among fans of whatever it is that's trying to be adapted, whether that be a book being turned into a movie.
It's feeding time.
A video game to a movie.
Chicken jockey!
Or in this case of this video, a video game to a novel. The problems that I often see when it comes to adaptations is when they change too much, offering nothing for the fan to latch onto, or they change too little, giving no extra depth or intrigue to the world that the game takes place in. When it comes to adapting something to another medium, you first have to look at what the original medium has to offer and where there lie some constraints in which the new medium can bridge the gap in between. I recently finished the Mass Effect trilogy for the first time after growing up with my older brother playing it, and me watching him, because the story seemed too complex and adult for me to understand what the heck was going on. After finally beating it as an adult, I, needless to say, was not satisfied. Not that the story was bad or anything, I just wanted more of it. I was looking at more stuff about the lore in the games and found there were a few novels written set in the universe. After this, it got me interested in the medium of novels as a video game adaptation choice, and bought a few other video game novels to see how they all fare. Are they all just quickly and terribly written cash grabs, or is literature actually quite an underdeveloped medium for adapting video games? Would you kindly come along with me as we see what these video game novels have to offer? If you enjoy this video, give it a like, or consider subscribing for more videos on books and literary content. Let's begin with the worst novel I read out of the four, Five Nights at Freddy's Silver Eyes. I should say, as a preface, that I've never really been a FNaF fan, even though when the first came out, I was probably the target demographic. I actually only just played the first game like 2 years ago for a Halloween stream.
Oh, fuckity fuck!
I never continued on to the other games after that, as the gameplay kinda bored me. Now, despite not enjoying FNaF all that much, this book was much worse. Published originally as an ebook before Scholastic bought the rights and published it, the novel is written not only by the series creator Scott Cawthon, but he also took on some help for the book with writer Kira Breed Risley, who, before these books, mostly wrote plays in New York for teens. The book basically has nothing to do with the games, aside from the animatronics and the series villains, so think of it as its own continuity. It follows a girl named Charlie, who returns to her hometown of Hurricane, Utah, where a childhood tragedy ripped her life apart. She's there to honor her dead friend, and along the way reunites with her old friend group. All the characters are kind of bland, to be honest, but there's John, who's Charlie's love interest, Carlton, who's sort of the comedic relief, Jessica, Marla's little brother Jason, and Lamar. Not even the main character Charlie really had enough personality or pizzazz for them to stand out, which sucks because a large portion of this novel is slow-paced and character-driven. With that, I don't even buy into these characters being in their late teens, as they act more like they're in their early 20s. It has that same problem with the adult writing teen effect, where it seems like they've never met a teenager in their life. There's legit so many times where the characters wink at each other. Like, is that something you've seen lots of teenagers doing? Winking at each other and going on cross-country road trips to the site of their old friend's death? Speaking of which, the other sections are just made up of the friend group taking trips to the closed-down site of their traumatic childhood event. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. We learn that Charlie has other ties other than their friend going missing there, as her father was the owner and created the animatronics. They just randomly decide to go there on their first night back in town. There's not much build up to it. They just go. Nothing much happens the first night they go, then they just go back to their hotels. This is much of what the novel consists of. They go to Freddy's, something slightly creepy or weird happens, they go back to the motel. I was expecting with something like a FNaF novel, it would feel something like Goosebumps if Goosebumps took itself too seriously and was kinda edgy, but it was just a slog to get through the first half of the book. The book doesn't really pick up its pace until they meet the security guard who goes by Dave, but who is later revealed to be William Afton, who is the series antagonist in the main series games. There's also some intriguing mystery surrounding Charlie's past, with her possibly having a brother who was killed by Afton, but man, the way this mystery unfolds is just paced really terribly, so by the point they finally reveal certain things, I'd pretty much lost any interest. There are some other minor issues I have with the book, such as the fact that they switch perspectives just randomly whenever they feel like, after they've already made the effort to establish Charlie as the main point of view. And when I mean they switch the points of view randomly, it'll sometimes happen in the same scene, and it just gave me whiplash while reading. There's also some problems where there are typos, or someone just forgot to put in a word where there should be one, which you'd think Scholastic would have checked and edited, but maybe they just didn't care. I know this book was made for a YA crowd, and I went in with that expectation, but I can't imagine someone who reads YA would enjoy this, because like the many other video game novels before it, it's not really a good book unless you're already a fan of the games. Much along this same path, but only slightly better, mostly because I already enjoy the IP, was Drew Karpyshyn's Mass Effect Revelation. After playing the games and reading this book's blurb, I was genuinely excited to read it. Quote, "Every advanced society in the galaxy relies on the technology of the Protheans, an ancient species that vanished 50,000 years ago. After discovering a cache of Prothean technology on Mars in 2148, humanity is spreading to the stars, the newest interstellar species struggling to carve out its place in the greater galactic community. On the edge of colonized space, ship commander and Alliance war hero David Anderson investigates the remains of a top-secret military research station. Smoking ruins littered with bodies and unanswered questions. Who attacked this post, and for what purpose? And where is Kali Sanders, the young scientist who mysteriously vanished from the base hours before her colleagues were slaughtered? Sanders is now the prime suspect, but finding her creates more problems for Anderson than it solves. Partnered with a rogue alien agent he can't trust, and pursued by an assassin he can't escape, Anderson battles impossible odds on uncharted worlds to uncover a sinister conspiracy, one he won't live to tell about. Or so the enemy thinks." Despite my excitement, when actually reading it though, my expectations were completely shattered with weak character work, bland writing, and a predictable plot. With its characters, the book switches points of view every chapter or so, with the three main ones being David Anderson, Kali Sanders, and Saren Arturius. David Anderson is a character that could have had an interesting and investing backstory with what is hinted at in the games, but there is not much there that doesn't read like cardboard. There are small moments of something of substance in his character, such as him dealing with his divorce, but there's no time to dive deeper into this before the dry as shit plot takes over. Kali Sanders as well was an interesting enough character, and while I don't have any huge complaints about her, there also wasn't much substance with her either, aside from her relationship with David Anderson, but again, the book doesn't get much of a chance to explore it. Though, I do know there are two other books that might slowly show their relationship, so I can't say much there. The character, though, that I was most interested in getting more backstory on was the antagonist of the first game and Spectre, Saren Arturius. But my same complaints follow with this character work being stale and relatively boring. He hates humans basically because his brother was killed by one, and he's pretty much a ruthless evil bastard. That's pretty much it with him. There's one scene with him that I did think had something of substance, where there was a moment where Saren wakes up a woman who had just been blown up and in intensive care just so he can get information out of her. He was getting a sedative he could use to put her back to sleep after he gets his information, but instead of giving her this sedative, he just sits there processing the information she gave him as she slowly dies of her wounds and is in shock. And it is honestly a pretty, just messed up moment, and it just, I don't know, it shows how ruthless he was. And it's a really interesting scene. Quote, "Jella was still thrashing uncontrollably, trapped in the throes of her ravaged body's desperate struggle to survive. But she was growing weaker now, her strength ebbing away. Saren idly twirled the hypodermic that might save her between his fingers, still considering the problem of Eden as he waited for her to expire." End quote. I usually don't like to be harsh with my criticism, but man, this book just sucked. From the head writer of the games, I was expecting he'd be able to adapt and immerse me into the wonderful character work, good pacing, and difficult moral choices that the Mass Effect trilogy had to offer, but it just doesn't. It's clear it was mostly there to promote and build hype for the first Mass Effect game as it was released, rather than make anything of good quality. With such an expansive universe, the Mass Effect has great potential for books that I don't think are being used, and sadly seem to be wasted in with these tie-in novels. I do know there is a comic book series, but I'll probably be saving that for another video. Moving on from the ones I didn't enjoy to the ones that actually surprised me was the Elder Scrolls novel The Infernal City by Greg Keyes, who's no stranger to tie-in novels, authoring many Star Wars books and even the novelization of the movie Interstellar. The blurb reads as follows. 4 decades after the Oblivion Crisis, Tamriel was threatened anew by an ancient and all-consuming evil. It is Umbriel, a floating city that casts a terrifying shadow, for wherever it falls, people die and rise again, and it is in Umbriel's shadow that a great adventure begins, and a group of unlikely heroes meet. A legendary prince with a secret, a spy on the trail of a vast conspiracy, a mage obsessed with his desire for revenge, and Anaig, a young girl in whose hands the fate of Tamriel may rest. I think The Elder Scrolls is probably one of the series most deserving of a novelization adaptation, as the world is so expansive and there's just so much you can do with it that can't be shown in the games. With the novel just coming in as a short 200 and some odd pages, it does work with those pages where they're able to give just enough information and lore that someone who isn't a fan or hasn't played the games would be able to pick this novel up and give it a read. The first of 2 books in the Elder Scrolls universe, The Infernal City takes place 4 decades after the ending events of Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion.
What do you want, Breton trash?
Wow.
Where Martin Septim dies, and following some in-between lore that I only figured out after looking online, the Mead Dynasty begins, though you don't need to know that to enjoy the book. The novel picks up in the land of Blackmarsh, specifically a villa known as Lilmoth, where a woman by the name of Anaig hangs out with her Argonian Finn, Mir Glim, and longs for adventure. Pretty regular hero adventure type deal here. They eventually get word of a flying city called Umbriel, and since this is obviously the adventure she's looking for, in Elder Scrolls fashion, she makes a flying potion and just flies up to the island with her friend Mir Glim.
Touched it.
It's working! I'm flying!
What?
Before noticing that literally all the people below the city are going crazy and being killed. Upon seeing this, Anaig convinces Mir Glim to join her in some heroics, but we and they quickly learn that they have no clue what they're doing, as they get captured by a woman known as Quinje. I don't know how to say it exactly, but I read it as Quinje. Quinje forces Anaig to work in her kitchens, which are there to feed the lords of the city, specifically feeding them food mixed with the souls of the dead. All of which is harvested from below the city, in Tamriel and other places. Mir Glim, the Argonian, is sent to this place called the Sump, as they don't believe him to be a very good cook. The Sump is basically this place where the city's people come from, if you want to call them that, as they are just made up of, like, worms. It's really strange, to be honest. And they're, like, birthed out of these pods that Mir Glim has to harvest and bring them up to the surface. Like, these are these pods underwater, where Mir Glim has to, like take the pods, and it's just really strange. Anaig uses this like robotic magic messenger bird. It's basically like a flying video call. So she sends this bird to find the Emperor's son, who we're to believe is a great hero. It's about this time the book switches perspectives with it following the son of the Emperor, Prince Atreus Mead. With the Atreus sections of the book, we are first introduced to him as something of a prince of the people, being on first name terms with his male soldiers and more than friendly terms the women in his outfit, sleeping with a new recruit by the name of Radhasha. It's right around here where the book really picked up for me, as we quickly learn that Atreus isn't the princely heroic soldier he and the rest of Tamriel think him to be. When he's notified by the messenger bird that Anaig sent about the floating city of Umbriel, he sets out with his soldiers to find it, despite his father's orders not to. His soldiers are ambushed and killed by being set on fire, as Radhasha, the new recruit he slept with, turns out to be completely against him, betrays, and knocks him out. Another character in the book, who I only failed to mention earlier because of his lack of chapters, is an investigator for the Imperial Agency Penitus Oculatus, by the name of Colin, who is investigating the attack on Atreus. It's through him we learn that Atreus was really only sent out on safe missions before, where the chances of him dying were slim to none, though it was made certain that Atreus should think that he's doing something great and believe himself to be this sort of heroic soldier. Don't you understand yet? You're a worse than mediocre fighter. You've never fought a fair fight in your life. You've never been in a battle that wasn't rigged. Foregone conclusion. Until now. Atreus suddenly realized he'd missed something about Radhasa. She wasn't merely deceptive, treacherous, and greedy. She was completely insane. Sure, he said. Whatever you say. Clearly you hate me, although I don't know why. I was nice to you, took you into my guard. I don't hate you as such, she said. I just hate what you are. It's not your fault, really. This was done to you, yet I can't help feeling that if you'd ever used your brain just once, if you had that slightest ability to step outside of your narcissistic little world. You've been with me 2 days. What do you know about me? Everyone interviewed for your guard is told, Atreus, and they all talk, don't they? How could they not? The way you blustered about as if they were your friends, the casual, everyday condescension. I don't see how any of them stood it for more than 2 days. I mean, yes, the pay is good, and in general you're assured fairly safe situations, but both y''s ass, it's annoying. A slow, gentle cold was working its way up from his belly. This isn't true, he said. My men loved me. They mocked you behind your back. The least of them was worth 3 of you. Did you really think you're the hero in the songs, in the books? Were the odds really 10 to 1 at Dogtrot Ford? Some authors tend to exaggerate, but it's all basically true. I can't help the mistakes some bard in Cheydinhall made, but I did those things. At Dogtrot Ford you faced half your number, and they weren't insurgents. They were condemned criminals that if they survived, they would be free. That's a lie. He felt dizzy, very dizzy. He leaned against a tree. You're starting to see it, aren't you? Because somewhere in that skull of yours you have at least of your father's brain. Just shut up, he said. I've no idea why you're saying this, but I won't listen to it anymore. Kill me, tie me back up, but just shut up, for the love of the divines. After Atreus gets saved from Radhasa and his kidnappers by a dark elf known only as Sol, they team up together and set out to find the flying city of Umbriel. These two have this really enduring dynamic, with Sol becoming something of a mentor figure for Atreus, guiding him on how he can be the prince that everyone else in Tamriel believes him to be. He also has ties to Umbriel, explaining how the man who created the city is actually a former Dark Elf co-worker of his from way back in Morrowind. After further explaining a bunch of Deja rigmarole, he says the only way to destroy the city is with a sword called Umbra that's supposed to be in Morrowind, or at least that's where he thinks it is. And it's also actually a sword you can find in a quest in Oblivion, if you didn't know. They set out across a place the mainline games haven't explored yet, with them going through elsewhere and meeting different types of Khajiit that also aren't shown in the games. I think that's really key to a lot of video game tie-in novels, as they offer a way to explore details and things that can't be shown in the games, and this book really benefits from doing that. After meeting these Khajiit, they escort them through Oblivion, which is how they're going to get to Morrowind in a quicker way, and they're hunted by the Daedric prince Hircine, and the Khajiit die. The ruler of Umbriel knows what they're doing as well, and finds them in Oblivion, trapping them above Umbriel, just to talk. Meanwhile, while all that is going on, Anaya's scenes are mostly her cooking up food for the lords of Umbriel, and these scenes seem to mostly be here for us to learn more about the strange city. They do pick up their pace a little when the kitchen is raided by a rival kitchen that wants to steal Anaya because of how good she cooks. Once they take her, she befriends the head chef of one of the best kitchens in the city by the name of Toll, who actually wants to be more than friends, though she declines this as she's planning her escape. Since she's doing such a good job, no one notices as she makes a flying potion for her and Mir Glim to escape the city. Mir Glim, as well, is still in the sump starts to get a group of misfits together and sort of starts a revolution. And he's also having this person go into the kitchen to pass notes back and forth between him and Aniag as they plan their escape. The book eventually ends on a cliffhanger, as it's a duology that is picked up in Lords of Souls, and I did not read that one. Yeah. All the characters this book follows are all surprisingly intriguing, and I found myself finding at least one thing to personally relate to in each of them. I truly enjoyed and didn't expect at all the arc that Atreus specifically would undergo, with him being a less than reliable narrator in regard to his feats and views of himself. I definitely think Elder Scrolls The Infernal City is one of the better video game novels, the reader not needing to be a fan of the games to enjoy it. And while I've not read the sequel, Lord of Souls, I'm quite interested in seeing how that one stands as well. Out of these 4 video game novels I read, my favorite by far was Bioshock Rapture. It's the end of World War II. FDR's New Deal has redefined American politics. Taxes are at an all-time high. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki has brought a fear of total annihilation. The rise of secret government agencies and sanctions on business has many watching their backs. America's sense of freedom is diminishing, and many are desperate to take that freedom back. Among them is a great dreamer, an immigrant who pulled himself from the depths of poverty to become one of the wealthiest and admired men in the world. That man is Andrew Ryan, and he believed that great men and women deserve better. And so he set out to create the impossible, a utopia free from government, censorship, and moral restrictions on science, where what you give is what you get. He created Rapture, the shining city below the sea. But as we all know, this utopia suffered a great tragedy. This is the story of how it all came to be, and how it all ended. A prequel to Bioshock 1 and 2, this book gives more detail to the events surrounding the creation of the underwater city of Rapture up to the later years before the city's demise. Much like the audio logs you can find throughout the games, this book follows a wide cast of the city's inhabitants and their slow descent to the city's madness. It kind of reminded me of J.G. Ballard's novel High Rise with its claustrophobic class war, except instead of taking place in a high-rise apartment building, it's a futuristic underwater city. With Rapture, it gives the reader more details and fleshes out the characters that the player only gets momentary glimpses of throughout audio diaries placed throughout the world.
Rapture's changing, but Ryan can't see the wolves in the woods. This Fontaine fella, he's a crook and a proper tea leaf, but he's got the atom, and that makes him the governor. He's sinking the profits back into bigger and better plasmids, building them Fontaine poorhouses. Like Fontaine recruiting centres. Before we know it, Bo's gonna have an army of splicers. And we're gonna have ourselves a whole heap of miseries.
This back and forth of perspective changes chapter by chapter, following a different character in each, though there are some that are more focused on than others, like Bill McDonough, Andrew Ryan, and Frank Fontaine. From Bill McDonough to the crazed-faced sculpting serial killer Steinman, the book's main focus is showing the influence and effects the objectivist philosophy of Rapture has on the inhabitants, with some of them delighting and stomping on those below them, and others such as Bill McDonough, who struggle to believe in the values that the city was founded on, despite the myriad of signs that maybe those very foundational values were the reason the city was doomed from the very beginning. The book opens up on Sullivan, head of security for Ryan Industries. He talks to Andrew Ryan, and they discuss the strikes going on at his factories, as well as something else of an even greater importance, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is the tipping point when Andrew Ryan decides to undertake the building of the underwater city of Rapture.
I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose Rapture.
To do this, he enlists the help of plumber at the time, but engineer Bill McDonough, and a myriad of scientists. As the book jumps from point of view, we see the other side of the same coin with a man of many names, Frank Gorland, or as we all know him in the game, Frank Fontaine. Fontaine serves the de facto antagonist, though most of the conflict comes from the very nature of the city itself. Fontaine just sort of manipulates that. The book also does this really neat trick with you seeing more hints of the sympathetic and human side of Andrew Ryan that I think the games don't show through the audio diaries. There's parts of the book you may want to believe in or root for Andrew Ryan, such as he helps Bill McDonough get a job with him, or that it seems he values the opinions of others, but by the end of it, it's really clear that he's a man doomed to his own god complex and hypocrisy. A man has thousands of choices in Rapture, but that one he gave up when he came to this world, a world that I created. I built it with money and resources earned with my sweat. It's all a lot of absurd whining. In time we will expand Rapture across the seabed, and there will be far more room to move about. He flicked his hand in a gesture of contemptuous impatience. They entered into a contract coming here. In the end, our choices make us what we are. A man chooses, Bill. They chose, and they must accept the responsibility. After the city finally gets built, it's nice to see Rapture in its functioning state that's completely missing in the city that we see in the games. It's like an actual city with people operating like actual citizens instead of madhouse insane asylum patients. The degradation of Rapture is quite slow process until Adam gets invented, with many of the citizens lacking jobs, becoming homeless, and feeling disappointed in the city itself. There is this sense of creeping claustrophobia as more and more problems arise with general repair issues and leaks constantly needing to be fixed, while the people are feeling trapped, literally and economically. Once Adam is invented though, this is when it really goes to hell, with basically just a bunch of drug addicts roaming the streets, hopped up with superpowers and guns, throwing fireballs at each other. At this point, most people are tired and giving up on Rapture, except for Andrew Ryan, who kills anyone who tries to leave. Even though I played through Bioshock quite recently before reading this, I completely forgot the people who were crucified outside Andrew Ryan's office, so as I was reading, I was fully expecting a happy ending for Bill McDonough and his family. Of course, there sorta is, but just not at all how I was expecting it to happen. Overall, this book completely surprised me and did what I think the actual games do so well, combining these literary themes and aspirations with the fun ridiculousness that the gaming mechanics can offer, with drugged up maniacs shooting fireballs out of their hands. Though this video only covered a few video game novels, I think they're all good examples of what video game novels should and shouldn't be. With the medium of the novel, it's the least expensive way to adapt a video game story, so it's interesting to me that good video game novels are few and far between. Instead of viewing it as a way to expand the video game's world or characters, it seems most video game companies view it just as a quick cash grab akin to some crappy, thoughtless DLC. It's clear that this underdeveloped adaptation choice, in terms of quality anyway, that I don't think would take more than a company hiring a good and caring writer that actually takes the prospect of adapting a video game to the page seriously, rather than viewing it as less than. Anyways, guys, that's all I got for now. I appreciate you watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I try to make my content as good as possible with each video, and I try to do something new with each video. I'm still new to this whole thing. Still trying to get better at editing and audio editing, video editing, all that stuff. If you have any books you would like me to review, just comment them down below. That would be great. Or if there's anything else you'd like to see me try out, then yeah, might try it. But thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good day or night or whatever it is that you're at. Thanks. Bye.